The metal door clicked shut behind me, and I heard the lock turn. Not the soft sound of someone securing a building for the night. This was deliberate, final. I turned to see the shelter worker, a woman maybe 10 years older than me, standing with her back against the door, phone already pressed to her ear. Her eyes were wide, almost frightened, but there was something else there too. Recognition. "Please don't leave," she said, voice shaking. "We've been searching for you for 25 years. My name is Maya Chen, and I'm 29 years old. 3 weeks ago, I was sleeping in my Honda Civic in a grocery store parking lot. 2 weeks ago, the Civic got towed because I couldn't afford the impound fees. 1 week ago, I walked into St. Catherine's Women's Shelter with everything I owned in a backpack that smelled like rain and gasoline. Tonight, I was trying to leave because another resident had stolen my phone, the last thing connecting me to the world where I used to exist, and no one seemed to care enough to do anything about it. I didn't understand what this woman was talking about. I think you have me confused with someone else," I said, gripping my backpack straps. The fabric was fraying. I'd noticed that morning. Everything I touched seemed to fall apart. "You're Maya Chen. Born March 15th, 1997. Your mother's name was Lian Chen." She was scrolling through her phone now, frantic. "You have a birthmark on your left shoulder blade, shaped like..." "Stop." My voice came out harder than I intended. "How do you know that?" She held up one finger, "Wait," and spoke into the phone. "Yes, I'm sure. She's here right now. St. Catherine's on Meridian Street. Please hurry." The shelter's common room felt smaller suddenly. There were maybe 6 other women scattered around, some watching the flickering television, others pretending not to listen to our conversation. I'd learned in the past week that privacy was a myth here. Everyone heard everything, and some people collected your pain like currency. "I need you to sit down," the worker said. Her name tag read *Denise Starr. "There are people who need to speak with you. People who have been looking for you for a very long time." I didn't sit. Standing felt safer, more ready. "I don't know what you're talking about. Nobody's looking for me. Nobody's been looking for me for years." That was true in a way that hurt to say out loud. My mother died when I was 7. Cancer, fast and merciless. I barely remembered her face except in fragments, her hands braiding my hair, the smell of jasmine tea, the way she hummed while cooking. After that, I went into foster care. 12 different homes in 11 years. Some were fine. Some were forgettable. 2 were bad enough that I still couldn't think about them directly, could only approach the memories sideways, like looking at the sun. I aged out at 18 with $847 in savings, a GED, and no plan. For a while, I was okay. I worked retail, then food service, then warehouse jobs. I had roommates, then a studio apartment, then half a room in someone's converted garage. The descent was so gradual I didn't notice until I was already underwater. 6 months ago, I lost my job when the warehouse closed. 4 months ago, I lost the garage room. 2 months ago, I lost the Civic. 3 weeks ago, I accepted that I'd lost whatever version of myself had believed things would get better. "Your mother," Denise said carefully, "left something for you. Before she died. But the executor couldn't locate you after you entered the system. Your records were fragmented. Every time they got close, you'd moved to a new placement." I felt something cold spread through my chest. My mother had nothing. We had nothing. "That's not true." The door buzzed. Denise moved to unlock it, and 2 people entered. A man in an expensive suit carrying a leather briefcase, and a woman in business casual with kind eyes and nervous hands. They looked at me like I was a ghost, or maybe like they were ghosts and I was the only person who could see them. "Ms. Chen," the man said. "My name is Richard Voss. I'm an attorney with Whitmore and Associates. This is Patricia Lim, a private investigator. We've been retained by your mother's estate for over 2 decades." Estate. The word felt foreign. People like me didn't have estates. We had garbage bags of clothes and backpacks that smelled like rain. "I think there's been a mistake," I said. Patricia stepped forward, pulling out a folder. "Your mother, Lian Chen, passed away on November 3, 2004. Before her death, she created a trust. A very substantial trust. She stipulated that it could only be released to you, and only when you were found. My legs felt weak. I sat down on the worn couch, not because Denise had told me to, but because standing suddenly seemed impossible. How much? My voice sounded strange. Richard opened his briefcase. The initial amount was significant. With investments and compound interest over 25 years, the current value is approximately $3.7 million. The number hit me like cold water. I heard it, understood the words individually, but couldn't make them mean anything. $3.7 million. Mine. That's not possible, I whispered. We were poor. We lived in a one-bedroom apartment in the bad part of town. She worked at a dry cleaner. Your mother, Patricia said gently, sitting beside me, was a very private person. The money came from your grandmother in Taiwan, an inheritance your mother received shortly before her diagnosis. She didn't spend it. She saved every penny for you. I thought about my mother's hands, always rough from work. The way she'd stretch one chicken across 3 meals. How she told me no when I asked for new shoes because mine still technically fit, even though my toes were cramped and the soles were coming loose. She'd had money. All that time, she'd had money, and we'd lived like we didn't. Why? I asked. Why didn't she use it? For medicine, for treatment, for... She tried, Richard interrupted. The medical records show she pursued every available option. But her cancer was extremely aggressive. By the time it was diagnosed, it was stage 4. The money wouldn't have saved her. So she saved it for you instead. Patricia pulled out a photograph, old and creased. It showed my mother, younger than I remembered her, holding a baby. Me. She was smiling in a way I'd never seen, completely unguarded. She left letters, Patricia continued. Dozens of them. One for every birthday she knew she'd miss. Instructions, advice, stories about her childhood. She wanted you to know her. Something broke open inside my chest. I'd spent 22 years believing I was alone, believing I came from nothing, believing I was easy to lose because I'd never mattered enough to hold on to. And the whole time, there had been this, evidence that I'd been loved so completely that a dying woman had sacrificed everything to secure my future. The other women in the common room weren't even pretending not to stare now. I could feel their eyes on me, calculating, envious, disbelieving. 3 days ago, I'd been just like them. Anonymous. Invisible. Poor in a way that made people look through you instead of at you. I need you to sign some documents, Richard said, pulling papers from his briefcase. Identity verification, account transfers, tax forms. It's going to take a few days to process everything, but we can arrange for immediate funds, say $50,000, to be available within 24 hours. $50,000. Tomorrow. More money than I'd earned in the past 3 years combined. I looked down at my hands. The nails were ragged, bitten short from stress. My jeans had a hole in the knee that I'd tried to sew shut with thread that didn't match. I was wearing someone else's donated coat because mine had been stolen 2 months ago. Ms. Chen. Richard prompted. Do you understand what I'm telling you? I understood. I was no longer homeless. I was no longer alone. I was no longer the person I'd been when I walked through St. Catherine's doors 7 days ago, invisible and disposable. But I also understood something else, something that settled cold and heavy in my stomach. I'd spent years being nothing to everyone. People had looked past me, forgotten me, dismissed me as not worth the effort of remembering. Foster parents who'd sent me back like a defective product. Employers who'd let me go without a second thought. Friends who'd drifted away when I couldn't afford to keep up. No one had searched for me then. No one had cared where I was or how to find me. And now, suddenly, I mattered. Because there was money attached to my name. I'll sign, I said quietly. But not tonight. I need time to think. Richard frowned. Ms. Chen, I understand this is overwhelming, but the sooner we process the paperwork. Tomorrow, I said, firmer. You've been looking for me for 25 years. You can wait 1 more day. They left me their cards, their direct phone numbers, their assurances that they'd return first thing in the morning. Denise unlocked the door and watched them go, then turned to me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Pity, maybe. Or curiosity. Or the dawning realization that I wouldn't be staying here much longer. You should probably keep this quiet, she said. For your own safety. But it was already too late. The common room had ears, and news like this moved fast. By the time I made it to the sleeping area, 30 cots arranged in rows, each with a small bin underneath for personal belongings, I could feel the shift. The other women watched me differently now. Not with the camaraderie of shared struggle, but with something harder. Calculation. I lay on my cot fully dressed, backpack clutched against my chest. Sleep felt impossible. My mind kept circling back to the number. 3.7 million. I tried to imagine it, picture what that much money looked like, but I couldn't. The biggest amount I'd ever had in my bank account at one time was $1,200, and that had felt like wealth. Around 2 in the morning, I heard whispers. 3 cots down, a woman named Janet was talking to her neighbor. I couldn't make out all the words, but I caught fragments, probably lying. Too good to be true. Think she's better than us now. I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep. This was familiar territory. I'd learned in foster care how quickly allies became enemies when circumstances changed. When the Harrisons had taken me in at 13, their biological daughter Bethany had been my best friend for exactly 3 weeks, until her parents started praising my grades and suggesting she study with me. After that, Bethany made it her mission to ensure I knew I didn't belong. She'd been subtle about it. Small cruelties that were easy to deny. My homework disappearing. My clothes ending up in the trash. Rumors at school that I was a thief, a liar, a charity case using the Harrisons for money they didn't have. I'd stayed quiet because I'd learned that speaking up only made things worse. Foster kids who complained were labeled difficult. Difficult kids got moved. I'd already been moved 7 times. I was tired. Eventually, Mrs. Harrison found her favorite necklace in my drawer. Bethany had planted it there, and I was sent to a group home. No one asked for my side of the story. No one thought to question why I would steal something so obvious, so easy to trace. I was guilty because it was easier to believe that than to examine the possibility that their daughter might be cruel. The next morning, I was awake before dawn. I sat on my cot and read through the business cards again. Richard Voss. Patricia Lim. Real people with real law firms and investigation agencies. I pulled out my backpack and emptied it. 2 changes of clothes, a toothbrush, a half-empty bottle of shampoo, a notebook where I'd been tracking job applications, a book I'd found in a little free library. This was my life. 29 years reduced to objects that fit in a single bag. At breakfast, watery oatmeal and coffee that tasted like water, Janet sat down across from me. She was maybe 45, weathered in the way that homelessness ages you. She'd been kind to me my first night here, sharing her extra blanket when I was shivering. So, she said, stirring her oatmeal without eating it. You're rich now. I don't know what I am, I said honestly. Must be nice. Having people look for you. Having someone who gave a shit whether you lived or died. Her voice was flat, but there was an edge underneath. Some of us don't have dead mothers with secret millions. I set down my spoon. I didn't know about it either. Sure. She stood up, leaving her oatmeal untouched. Just remember where you came from when you're living in your mansion or whatever. I wanted to tell her that I'd never forget. That 3 weeks ago I was sleeping in my car, and 2 months before that I was eating 1 meal a day to save money, and 6 months before that I was rationing insulin for a coworker because she couldn't afford her prescription. I wanted to say that poverty wasn't something you forgot just because it ended, that it lived in your body like a scar. But I didn't say anything. I'd learned that defending yourself only made people more certain you were guilty. Richard and Patricia returned at 9. They brought coffee, real coffee from an actual cafe, and pastries in a white paper bag. The smell alone felt like luxury. We sat in Denise's small office, papers spread across her desk. My mother's signature was on some of them, written in the careful precise hand I barely remembered. Lian Chen. She'd signed these knowing she was dying, knowing I'd read them someday as an adult she'd never meet. Before we proceed with the financial documents, Patricia said, I wanted to give you these. She pulled out a bundle of letters, tied with string. Each envelope was labeled with a year: Maya, age 8. Maya, age 13. Maya, age 18. They went all the way to Maya, age 30. My hands shook as I took them. The paper was old, yellowed at the edges. Some envelopes were thicker than others. She wrote them all in the hospital, Patricia explained. In her last weeks. She wanted to make sure you had her guidance, even if she couldn't be there to give it in person. I opened the first one. Maya, age 8. My dearest daughter. You are 8 years old today. I wish I could be there to bake you a cake with too much frosting, the way you like it. I wish I could see what kind of person you're becoming. By now, you know I'm gone. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for leaving you alone. But I need you to understand something. You are not alone. You carry me with you, in your face, in your stubbornness, in the way you hum when you're concentrating. The money I've left you is not just money. It's every hour I worked. It's every sacrifice I made. It's my way of still taking care of you, even from where I am. Be careful who you trust. People will want things from you now. But remember, your worth is not in what you have. It's in who you are. I love you forever. Mom. I read it 3 times. Then I carefully folded it and placed it back in the envelope. My eyes were burning, but I didn't cry. Crying felt like something I couldn't afford to start because I might not be able to stop. Take your time, Patricia said softly. We have all day. But I didn't want to take my time. I wanted this part over with. I wanted to sign the papers and access the money and leave this place and never look back. I wanted to stop being the person everyone pitied or resented or dismissed. I reached for the pen. The documents took 2 hours. Signature after signature, initials, dates, acknowledgements. Richard explained each one patiently, but I barely listened. I just wanted them done. Finally, he slid a bank card across the desk. This is a temporary account with $50,000. It's active immediately. The full estate transfer will take approximately 2 weeks to finalize, but this should be sufficient for your immediate needs. I picked up the card. It was heavy, made of metal instead of plastic. My name was printed on it. Maya L. Chen. The L was for Leanne. My mother's name as my middle name, something I'd never known because my birth certificate had been lost somewhere in the foster system. What do I do now? I asked. The question felt childish, but I genuinely didn't know. I'd never had enough money to require a plan for it. Whatever you want, Richard said. Though I'd recommend finding secure housing first. A hotel, perhaps, while you look for something permanent. A hotel. I could stay in a hotel. I could order room service. I could take a shower that lasted more than 5 minutes. I could sleep in a bed without worrying someone would steal my shoes while I slept. There's one more thing, Patricia said. She pulled out a final envelope, this one marked with my mother's handwriting. To Maya, when she is found. Inside was a photograph and a letter. The photo showed a house, small, painted yellow, with a garden in front. On the back, my mother had written, "This was my dream. Maybe it can be yours too." The letter was short. Maya. If you're reading this, it means they found you. I'm so relieved. I know you've probably had a hard life. I know the system I'm leaving you to isn't kind. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from that. The money is yours to use however you want. But I have one request. Don't let it change who you are. Don't let it make you cruel. The world will try to teach you that money means power, and power means not caring about people who have less. Resist that. Remember what it felt like to have nothing. Remember what it felt like to be invisible. And when you can, when you're ready, help someone else become visible. All my love. Mom. I folded the letter and put it in my pocket. Then I stood, gathered the bundle of birthday letters, and picked up my backpack. Thank you, I said to Richard and Patricia, for finding me. It's what your mother paid us to do, Richard said. Though, if I'm honest, we'd started to think we never would. You were very difficult to track. Because I'd been disposable. Easy to lose. A signature on a form, a file in a cabinet, a girl who didn't matter enough to follow when she disappeared between placements. But I mattered now. At least to them. At least because of the money. I walked out of Denise's office and back into the common room. Janet was there, along with a few others. They looked at me with expressions I recognized: envy, resentment, the bitter certainty that life was unfair and I was proof. Leaving us already? Janet asked. Yes, I said simply. Must be nice to have an escape route. Some of us are stuck here. I thought about my mother's letter. Remember what it felt like to be invisible. I thought about the $50,000 on the card in my pocket. I thought about how 3 weeks ago I'd been exactly where Janet was, and how easily I could be there again if things had gone differently. Janet, I said quietly, what would you need to get out of here? Really get out, not just survive, but actually build something. She blinked, surprised. What? If you could have anything, job training, first month's rent, a car to get to work, what would actually change your situation? Her face shifted, suspicion warring with something that looked like hope. I don't know. Why? Just think about it, I said. I'll be back tomorrow. Then I walked out of St. Catherine's Women's Shelter, into the cold morning air, into a life I didn't yet know how to navigate. The hotel room was quiet in a way I'd forgotten silence could be. No rustling of other bodies. No whispered conversations. No fluorescent lights humming overhead. Just clean sheets and soft pillows and a lock on the door that only I controlled. I sat on the bed for 20 minutes, not moving, just existing in the space. Then I went to the bathroom and turned on the shower. I stood under the hot water until my skin turned red, washing away weeks of feeling dirty in a way that had nothing to do with actual dirt. I used all the tiny bottles of shampoo and conditioner. I wrapped myself in a bathrobe so soft it felt like wearing a cloud. Then I opened my laptop, an old, barely functioning thing I'd kept charged at public libraries, and started searching. Not for apartments or cars or any of the things Richard had suggested. I searched for St. Catherine's Shelter, for homeless services, for statistics on women living on the streets. The numbers were staggering. And behind each number was a person like Janet. Like me 3 weeks ago. Invisible until they weren't, and sometimes not even then. I thought about my mother's letter. Help someone else become visible. But I didn't know how. And there was a part of me, a part one wasn't proud of, that wanted to just take the money and disappear. Build a life so far from poverty that I'd never have to think about it again. Never have to remember what it felt like to count pennies for a $1 menu meal. Never have to see the look in people's eyes when they realized you were homeless, that particular combination of pity and disgust and relief that it wasn't them. I opened the first birthday letter. Maya, age 9. My dear girl. Today you are 9. You've been without me for a year now. I wonder who is braiding your hair, who is making sure you eat vegetables, who is reading you stories before bed. I hope whoever has you is kind. I hope they see how special you are. There's something I never told you because you were too young to understand. When I was a girl in Taiwan, my family was very poor. We had nothing. My father worked 3 jobs. My mother sewed clothes for neighbors. We ate rice and pickled vegetables for every meal. When my mother died, your grandmother, she left me an inheritance I didn't know existed. She'd been saving in secret, same as I'm doing now for you. Every coin she could spare, hidden away. She told me, in her last letter, that poverty isn't a moral failing. It's a trap. And the only way to escape a trap is to have someone on the outside throw you a rope. I'm throwing you a rope, Maya. Catch it. Pull yourself out. Then throw a rope to someone else. Love always. Mom. I closed the letter carefully. My mother had known. She'd understood what it meant to be invisible, to be dismissed, to be trapped. And she'd found a way out not just for herself, but for me. Now she was asking me to do the same for someone else. But the thought of going back to St. Catherine's made my stomach twist. I'd escaped. Why would I voluntarily return? I slept 14 hours that night. When I woke, I ordered room service, eggs, bacon, toast, orange juice, coffee. I ate slowly, tasting everything, remembering what it felt like to be full. Then I got dressed and went back to the shelter. Denise looked surprised to see me. Maya, I didn't expect you to come back. I wanted to talk to Janet, I said. Is she here? She's in the common room. But Maya, be careful. Some of the women are upset about your situation. There's been talk. What kind of talk? Denise hesitated. The kind where people convince themselves you don't deserve what you got. That you're somehow cheating the system by having a dead mother with money. It's not rational, but poverty rarely is. I found Janet folding donated clothes in the corner. She looked up when I approached, her expression guarded. I thought about your question, she said before I could speak. What I'd need to get out. Tell me. A car. Not a nice one, just something that runs. I've got a job offer at a call center 15 miles from here, but there's no bus route. If I had a car, I could work. If I could work, I could save. If I could save, I could get an apartment. She paused. But that's not happening, so it doesn't matter. How much would a car cost? A reliable used one. She laughed. Bitter. $5,000, maybe. For something that won't break down every month. Why? You writing a fantasy novel? I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. The balance still didn't feel real. $50,000. I navigated to the transfer section. What's your bank account number? I asked. Janet stared at me. What? Your account number. Or if you don't have an account, we can open one right now. There's a bank 2 blocks from here. You're serious? Yes. Why? The question came out harsh, almost angry. Why would you give me $5,000? You don't know me. I could take it and buy drugs. I could disappear. I could. You could also buy a car and get a job and build a life, I interrupted. And yeah, maybe you won't. Maybe you'll make choices I wouldn't make. But my mother gave me a rope out of the trap. I'm throwing you one too. What you do with it is up to you. Janet's eyes were wet. She blinked rapidly, looking away. I don't have a bank account. They closed it after I bounced too many checks. Then we'll open one. Come on. We walked to the bank together. It took an hour to set up the account. Janet needed identification, proof of address, we used the shelter, and patience with a banker who clearly thought we were wasting his time. But eventually, she had a checking account with a temporary debit card. I transferred $7,000. $5 for the car, $2 for insurance and registration and whatever else she'd need. Janet stared at the receipt the banker handed her. I don't understand why you're doing this. Yes, you do, I said. You'd do it too, if you could. She shook her head. No. Most people wouldn't. Most people would take the money and forget where they came from. Maybe I will too, eventually, I admitted. But not today. When we got back to the shelter, word had already spread. I don't know how, maybe Denise had mentioned it, maybe someone had overheard, but the other women knew. They gathered around, asking questions, making requests, their voices overlapping. I need help with childcare costs. My medication is $300 a month. If I could just get first and last month's rent. My teeth are rotting, I need a dentist. It was overwhelming. There were 30 women in this shelter. Hundreds more in the city. Thousands across the state. I couldn't help everyone. The $50,000 wouldn't last if I tried. Even the full $3.7 million wouldn't be enough to solve systemic poverty. I held up my hands. Stop. Please. I can't, I need to think. The voices quieted, but the eyes didn't. They watched me with desperate hope and building resentment, the same combination I'd seen my whole life. People wanting things from me I couldn't give, then hating me for not giving them. I left the shelter and walked for hours. Past the grocery store where I'd parked my Civic. Past the warehouse where I'd worked until it closed. Past the garage room I'd rented from a landlord who'd pocketed my deposit and refused to return it. This city was full of traps. I'd escaped one, but there were thousands more, each with a person inside. My phone rang. Patricia. Maya, I wanted to check in. How are you doing? I'm overwhelmed, I said honestly. That's normal. Sudden wealth is traumatic in its own way. Have you considered speaking with a financial advisor? I can recommend. How much of my mother's money did you spend looking for me? I interrupted. She paused. The retainer was $500,000. Over 25 years, with expenses, we've used approximately $200,000. Your mother was very specific that we were to never stop searching. $200,000 to find me. A girl who'd been lost in the system, cycling through placements, invisible to everyone who was supposed to keep track. Patricia, can I ask you something? Of course. When you were searching for me, you must have seen a lot of girls in the system. Girls like me who didn't have a trust fund waiting. What happened to them? Another pause. Maya, I can't. I'm not asking for names. Just generally. What happens to foster kids who age out with nothing? Statistics aren't encouraging, she said quietly. Higher rates of homelessness, incarceration, poverty. Many don't make it to 30. The system fails them. My mother failed me too, I said. The words felt disloyal, but they were true. She had money. She could have used it to make sure I never entered foster care. She could have set up guardianship, hired lawyers, protected me. Instead, she just left money and hoped someone would find me someday. She was dying, Maya. She did what she thought was best. I know. And I'm grateful. But she was wrong about one thing. The rope isn't enough. You have to teach people how to climb. I hung up and stood there on the sidewalk, watching people pass. They didn't see me. I was just another body taking up space. Even with $50,000 in my account, I was invisible to them. But I didn't have to stay invisible. I went back to the hotel and opened my laptop. I spent the next 6 hours researching non-profit structures, grant writing, social services, homeless advocacy. I read stories of other people who'd escaped poverty and tried to help others do the same. Some succeeded. Many failed. The problems were too big, too entrenched, too systemic for one person to solve. But my mother hadn't asked me to solve poverty. She'd asked me to help someone become visible. I could do that. Not for everyone. Not even for most people. But for some. I opened a new document and started writing. Not a plan, exactly. More like a promise to myself. A commitment to remember where I'd been, even as I moved forward to wherever I was going.